Hello, and today I've got Nhan Nguyen of Advanced Property Strategies, and we're going to be talking about development. The reason we are having this conversation is because I believe that most renovators should be thinking about evolving to development at some point in time. And the main reason for that is that the profit margins are generally higher. But of course, with higher profit margins come higher risks. And so today we're going to be talking about an expert in the field. Like me, he's made quite a lot of mistakes, and we all know that's where the learnings come from. So welcome, Nhan.
G'day, Bernadette. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I think that these little exchanges of expertise are really gold for our audience. And so let's get into it. So do you want to just give me a rough sort of outline of how you got to be where you are today?
Yeah, for sure. So, firstly, thanks for being with me today and enjoying this beautiful sunshine. Hey, we're in a great weather at the moment. And
I know. I know, yeah.
No, it's beautiful. So I'm really loving the property game. When I started, I was in about my 20s. I actually picked up the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad when I was 19 or so. I was going to university and I was always reading personal development books and stumbled on Robert Kiyosaki. And a few months later, I realized my friends were into it. They had the board game. We started going to seminars, and it was a really interesting path that I started off because I had no intention. I was one of those kids who was annoyed when you played Monopoly. As a kid, I'd always lose, and I just didn't understand the game. So I thought, what, business isn't for me. I'm not really into this. So having said that, it sparked a really good interest in me when I was 19, 20, 21, going to seminars about anything and everything, whether it's business, property, shares, foreign exchange, anything. And I really started to look at different ways of making money. After a few mistakes here and there, I figured out that property was something I really enjoyed. It wasn't necessarily something I was good at, but it's something I enjoyed, and I love the negotiation side of things. So by the time I was 21, I bought 3 properties, and I just threw myself into it. I was lucky to even finish university. I'd started failing subjects when I was out there looking at houses with some of my mentors and colleagues. So yeah, it started off as an early journey. I made a lot of mistakes early on, like you mentioned, and progressed from there. So, doing some buy reno holds, some buy reno sells, and then over the years growing, doing strata titling townhouses, renovating townhouses, building houses. That was in about 2005, 2007. And done a whole different foray of different types of deals, but mainly residential. I'm starting to do some commercial stuff now with the childcare centre, but mainly residential, land subdivisions, townhouses, those kind of things.
Wow. To be honest with you, a couple of things I wanted to say there. I could not get past Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I know it has some great principles in it, but I could not get past the fact that his premise was that he measured the value of a person by their wealth building strategies. I just couldn't. So, a lot of people talk about that book and it's just, yeah. So, but anyhow, that's fine. And I didn't know that you started out renovating.
Well, I think that's where most people start, isn't it? So I bought a house. It was I'm not sure, it was a motivated seller. I think it was worth $65,000. I paid $55,000 for it. The tenants were renting, I think paid $135 a week. And it was positively cash flowed. So based on those numbers, the crazy thing I did though was to get the first homeowners grant was I moved in with the tenants. I don't know if you know that story.
Why does that not surprise me?
You know me well enough now to see some of the crazy things I do. So I gave them a rent reduction. I think it was $100 a week. And I moved into one of the rooms. I was there once a while, once a week, twice a week to get the first homeowners grant. And it was pretty crazy. The girlfriend was 21. The boyfriend was 65. It was just, I was 21 at the time and I was just not aware of social graces. I was just focused on, I've got a house. They're paying me rent. It's positively cash flow. I got the first homeowners grant. Life is good. So, looking back on it now, I'm sure we could share stories of some of the crazy things we've done.
I don't think I can match that one, actually.
You sure? But yeah, I think that was the first one. I ended up I think, buying it for 55, selling it for 65, but with all the costs, those tenants moved out and some other tenants moved in. I tried to be too tricky. I think that's one of my challenges that I've had to teach my clients, is just to keep it really simple. I did some, sexy, in inverted commas, vendor finance option strategy with the buyers or the tenants with potential rent to buy. And they just walked all over me because I was young, 21, believed what they said. They're on Centrelink, getting $1,000 a week, 6 kids, and they trashed my property. And I sold that property with 65K and made $2,000 profit, but a lot of scars and a lot of emotional upset and stress as a 21-year-old because they weren't paying rent and I couldn't kick them out either. So
wow.
So go for it.
Sorry, they're good. They're the best learning, so aren't they?
Yeah.
You don't make that mistake twice.
No, well, I did actually.
To
different tenants.
Slow learner.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
It's true.
Oh, so how did you get to be teaching? So what was the I guess motivation for going this way?
Yeah, for sure. So, coming back to Kiyosaki, and I'm trying to figure out which chapter you're talking about that you didn't like, and then that's okay. Maybe I was young and vulnerable and took it too literally. When you read it, it was a little bit different. But with Kiyosaki, he did seminars in '99 and 2000, 2001. At the convention center here in Brisbane. And I was really inspired by his message and how he was able to inspire people to just essentially lift their financial independence and not depend on the government. I think that's probably the message. Some of the things he said were, a bit out there, a bit abrasive. I thought, okay, this guy's pretty arrogant, but you know what? I don't have to be that way. I'll just take my own story to it. So, and essentially, with a Christian background, I do love sharing a message. When something works, I love helping people as well. In property, there's a lot of ways that you can make mistakes, and a lot of people do make mistakes. And I've made a lot of mistakes myself, and I've known that, if people can avoid those mistakes that I've made. For example, I did a deal where I borrowed money, and it was just really expensive, 4% a month, which was 48% per annum. Right. So the interest rates these days are sub 4%, let alone 4% a month, 48% per annum. And I've just done some crazy things like, that one was the first one that mentioned there, moving in with the tenants. And as a younger investor, I didn't know where the boundaries are and had to find out myself. And as people get into the game, they want to try some things and they push the boundaries. And I feel my job and responsibility, if they're willing to listen to me, is show them what the boundaries could be so that they sustain their growth. I don't try to limit clients' growth. I find some clients feel like I'm limiting them. It's like, a teenager wanting to expand themselves and explore the world. And in the world of property, if you grow too fast, as you know, you can expose yourself and lose a lot of money and go broke and run out of money very, very quickly if you don't do it in a sustainable way.
Exactly. Yeah. And I guess what I'd like to ask you is, what sort of profit margins does your let's talk about your strategies first. What would be if someone came to you and said, I want to build my wealth reasonably quickly, what sort of strategies would you be suggesting that they take on?
Yeah, very good. So it's interesting, though, that wherever people are, I generally do suggest a handful of things. Firstly, is they learn how to renovate. And I know this wasn't a loaded question that you had, but... this is all news to me, so I'm all ears. This is some of the things that I get my coaches to talk to my clients about. I say that there's 3 things that they need to focus on. Definitely, firstly, is they need to know the basics of renovating. Full disclosure for the listeners here is I don't like renovating. I prefer not to renovate. It's not a skill set of mine. I've got clients who are way better and more efficient than me at renovating. But I say to them, look, renovating is an essential skill and you need to know how to do it. At the end of the day, I'm in the business of property to make money. So I find things that I enjoy to make money, which is development. But essentially, cosmetic renovation is where we essentially suggest people to start. The second skill that we suggest people do is learn how to buy right. So buying under market value, learning how to negotiate with vendors, learning how to negotiate with agents and get the best deal possible. And the third thing we suggest people do is focus on multiple sources of income. And that could be, you know, like a free block of land, subdividing the back block off, building a granny flat at the back, building duplexes at the back of an existing house, or renting out, you know, your rooms one by one to get multiple tenants. So I think in summary is one, the cosmetic reno, two, the buying right skill, and thirdly, the multiple sources of income.
Okay. And so are you generally a buy and hold strategy, or do you buy and sell as well?
Yeah, very good. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions in property when people associate, in seminars especially, buy and hold with Warren Buffett. But I do both. You know, I do both. I believe in development, buy and hold is healthy, and buy and sell is healthy. And I believe that, you know, if you are active in the property market and you do multiple transactions, you can do that. Some people, you know, they work PAYG and they do that for 10, 20, 30 years. They don't have a lot of time or passion or commitment to doing a lot of transactions. So buy and hold, I do suggest, could be a good strategy for them. But for me personally, and for what I suggest to my clients is buy some. So build some, sell some, keep some, build some, sell some, keep some. So that could be, you know, do a 1 into 3, sell 2, keep 1, or 1 into 5, sell 4, keep 1, because there's benefits of both and there's negatives of both. But yeah, you just got to balance the two, just like left leg and right leg to balance walking, moving forward. That's my suggestion there, just in a generalization.
Yeah. And so let's get a bit of gold here now. So what are your tips for buying under market value?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the things that is not very well understood or taught just in the general marketplace is looking for motivated sellers. And I think that's definitely one of my strengths in our teachings as we talk about the 4 Ds, you know, divorce, deceased estate, debt, and distance. You know, one of the deals that I bought off a deceased estate, they didn't necessarily give me at a massive discount, but they were forced to sell. Essentially, there was 4 siblings, 4 sisters, of which 2 were executors, and that they were committed to sell. And it was a property that was 1,062 square meters on a corner. I was able to keep the existing house, do a cosmetic reno on that, and cut off 4 blocks off that. So each of the blocks are around about 180 square meters. And so that combined the motivated seller strategy with the free block of land strategy that I talked about before. So because it had 2 street frontage and we're able to maintain the existing house, we're just able to be able to cut off 4 blocks. I knew the zoning and I understood the zoning and ability to cut off a small blocks off it.
Okay, and that's a great strategy. That's something we do, not necessarily the floor blocks off, but look for a renovation project that has some land, because it just adds that extra strategy and extra profit potential.
Yeah, that's right, and not necessarily that much more physical work, isn't it?
No, really no more physical work, because most of it gets done by the
civil contractor.
Yeah, and the town planner and so on.
Yeah, for sure.
But so just let's get to the free blocks of land. Then it's not completely free though.
Oh no, not necessarily. It's available.
Yeah.
It's available. Yeah, and it's underutilized. So it could be, 1,000 square meters, like you said, with the house at the front. I think you've done one where it was 800 square meters on a corner block. Keep the house.
Yeah. What about joint ventures? So joint ventures are the bane of my life, because I don't know what it is. But what I have noticed is when people get into joint ventures, something happens, and there's often managing the relationships is quite challenging. Have you found that?
For sure. Look, I'm glad, for those listeners here, Bernadette and I have known each other for a good enough while to be able to be completely blunt with each other. The joint ventures I do now in 2020 and moving beyond in the last 5 years were completely different to what I did the previous 15 years in my property career. I'll be honest with you. So you are absolutely right. It's like, a marriage that wasn't meant to be, because what I mean by that is that oftentimes people have business backgrounds or business agendas that they don't even know exist until you get into business with them. And oftentimes, or sometimes you'll get into business with friends, good friends, but when money's on the table, things change, right?
Exactly. I often say, and I do like to call it out as it is, because I think there's a rosy view put out about joint ventures,
Yes.
and I think people need to go in with their eyes wide open.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
one of the things that I say to our people when they're doing them is, this is like marriage. You are joined at the hip, and you've got to expect that some point in time you're going to hate the other person's guts. It's just a fact of life. You're going to think that that you're having to do more or whatever, and you've got to really bring. I always say the essential ingredient to a joint venture is bringing an open heart and really being grateful for the opportunity to do a project where you wouldn't be able to do one. And sometimes that means just sucking it up and getting on with the job.
Sure. Yeah.
So basically, do people find joint venture partners in your community? I'm asking you this because I know this is what my audience will be thinking. So I'm just making sure we answer their questions.
No, this is good. I'm glad we're not taking the rosy view of things. And I suppose I want to clarify my angle on how I approach joint ventures within my programs as well. So, and address that question that you mentioned as well. So firstly, when my clients do joint ventures, we generally, the way that I teach them how to approach it is with two parts. So imagine a circle and you cut it in half. One half provides all the funds and the other half provides the time. So with my clients, they come in with the opportunity of doing no money down, where they are in charge and expected to do all the work physically of the project. So whether it's painting the walls or organizing a painter or organizing a build or, organizing the concrete. So my point is that with my clients, when they're going with the no money down JV, they are expected to do all the time, negotiate with the agent, go to the auctions, all negotiations, organize the paperwork, and the time partner, their job is to pay for everything. So essentially buy the property in their entity, let's say, pay for the mortgage payments, put down the deposit, pay for the stamp duty, all the renovation costs, any overruns. So essentially each person has their role. So I think that's really important in joint ventures to stop the headaches or minimize the headaches, because there will be headaches and conflicts, especially when it comes time to sell, when there's a disagreement on price. But yeah, firstly, you really got clear on roles and responsibilities. Your role is money, my role is time, and anything that comes up, I'll sort it out. So that's the first thing. Second thing is exit strategy. I think that's with joint ventures that people stuff up on, is that they think that it's till death do us part, right? But if with property, it's not. It's a transaction. It's a transaction, just like, if you and I do a seminar together, it's a transaction. We do a transaction, or you go to McDonald's and you have a cheeseburger. You have a choice to do business again down the track or not. And then there needs to be an exit on it. It's not just till death do us part. And like you said, joined at the hip. And that combines with my other philosophy, which is get in, get out, get paid. So it's about the velocity of the faster you get in and get out and get paid, everybody can enjoy the fruits of their labor, enjoy the profits, and have a glass of wine and choose whether to or not do another deal together.
Yeah, brilliant.
So just to clarify that with the listeners here is, and I get it, I'll be honest with you, I don't do deals like that anymore because I'm qualified enough to be able to get my own serviceability, and I raise capital slightly differently to that basic model that I talked about there. But when I started in for the first 10 years, that model has worked a treat. Yes, you do have disagreements, and there are challenges. Like I had a partner who just refused to sell his property. At the beginning, I was able to get in, buy a couple of $1 million worth of property. He funded everything, but he didn't want to sell because he had a big enough tax bill. He didn't want to pay more tax. He was a doctor, and all I wanted to do was to get profit out of the equity, out of the deal, rather than cash flow. Cash flow was good, but I wanted the extra 50, 100, 200 grand from the sales of the properties, not just the cash flow positive property income. So my point is that's why I specifically talk about, exit strategy, having an exit in mind, the velocity of money, getting in, getting out, getting paid. So, and so answer your second question is yes, people do joint ventures within our community. If a deal is good enough and it ticks all the boxes, from time to time, people can bring me their deals and I'll introduce them to various potential money partners as well. It's up to them to either do business or make sure that meets everybody's needs. As you know, with a money partner, there are a lot of needs that sometimes can be met and sometimes they can't. And it's just a negotiation like anything else.
Great. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that. Now, the next thing I want to ask you is, so I don't know, one of my mentors used to say to me, show me the money. You might even know who that is because I'm pretty sure you've done some dealings with him too. So if someone came to you looking at your program, what sort of margins could they expect? Say I've got someone coming and they want to do a deal and they've got some money to invest. They might need a joint venture partner, but they want to get in and get out and get paid. What sort of profit margins do you work on?
So would you consider them a beginner developer?
Yes.
And wanting to learn?
Definitely,
Sure.
yeah.
So look, when people are wanting to do developments for the first time, I generally suggest they aim around at the 100 to 150, maybe even 200K mark to make it worthwhile. Why that is to get into a subdivision or a splitter, your acquisition cost is at least 500, 600K. So if you're not making at least 100, 150K on something like that, based on an 18 to 22% profit margin, it's not really worthwhile. If you're doing a reno, some of my clients, they'll be happy with $50,000, $80,000. But like you said, with the reno margins, it can be quite thin, just because, not because of the reno itself, it's just the transactional costs, stamp duty, agent's commission. It's 5% in, 5% out. So 10% of costs are just transactional costs that you actually get no value from whatsoever, just paper. And the same thing with development is that there's going to be applications, approvals, contributions from time to time. GST may be applicable on vacant land. So yeah, if I was them, I'd be looking for the 100 to 150K mark as a starter, and doing maybe a 1 into 2, just because it's just a good way to cut your teeth. The more profitable deals, I'll be honest with you, are beyond that. We're talking 1 into 5, 1 into 7 is a really good sweet spot. When you get above 1 into 7, the structure of the development kind of changes. You've got to start putting in roads and other infrastructure, which is cost prohibitive. I'm doing a 30 lotter at the moment. I've got to put a big fat road in the middle of it, and that's just expensive. I've got retaining walls. I've got left, right, and center bioretention. It's expensive and complicated. So when people are starting out, I don't try to stem in their enthusiasm. I just want to steer them to success on their first deal so they can organically grow onto a second and third deal with confidence and growing organically, rather than plowing their way into a headache or, potentially breaking even, or worse yet, losing money.
Yeah. And you do, going on from that, you do offer mentoring?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So in our programs, we focus on the 3 fundamentals, like I mentioned before: buying under market value, free blocks of land, as well as no money down. So I think with those 3 elements, if you're wanting to do development, you've got the essentials there. And a lot of it is learning on the job, so to speak, within our training and our programs and our boot camps. We get people on the phones, ringing agents, putting in offers, talking to property owners live, as well as talking to property investors. So it's very much interactive, and that's why my students get a lot of results, because we make them do it rather than just sit there and give them a PowerPoint.
Teach them, and that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just on the no money down thing, I know you've just touched on that a bit. I forgot about that bit. Do you want to just elaborate a bit more? So what's available? Because I know a lot of people that I work with would think that's a great skill to have. So basically, how do you structure those sorts of deals?
Yeah, for sure. So like I mentioned before, I think that the critical things that we teach that make our clients able to capital raise is, firstly, we give them a business plan. So we give them a template to use to present the deals. I think a big part of raising capital that a lot of beginner investors don't understand is there's a language that they need, or a language of comfortability. So for example, return on investment or cash on cash return. Those are just words that are bandied around, but what does that mean? And if you have a 10% yield or 10% profit margin versus a 20% profit margin, yes, it's obviously double the profit, but how does that relate to risk? So we give you give the clients a template on how to raise capital. And it's the same template that I actually use in my capital raising. So I'm still capital raising. In the last 12 or so months, I raised $1.2 million in cash investors. And I use the same template that I teach my clients to use. And it's a very step-by-step copy and paste. It's a template I've derived over the last 20 years, trial and error, feedback from clients. So yeah, that's one thing, is a template. Second thing is, in our courses, we teach people what to say and what not to say to investors as well. It's about the approach.
Yeah.
It's no different to talking to a real estate agent looking for a good deal, right? It's the same thing. It's a process. And most of the time, this process is not taught at school. So yeah, the way I've learned it is just through making mistakes, getting feedback from investors, and looking at, okay, what are their needs and what are their desires, but at the same time, making sure your needs are met and your interests are protected as well.
Great. Okay, so we're just about ready to wrap up. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should have?
Oh, no, look, I think oftentimes people ask me, Nhan, why do you do seminars in education when you're doing so well in property? I find it's like playing multiple sports. It's just very enjoyable for me. Like I said, with a Christian background, wanting to give back and reduce the amount of mistakes and pain that other people could experience through the learnings and the mistakes that I've made. I love doing property, but I do find, because the projects that I run, they're very efficient. I can't physically, I've got, let's say, 3 or 4 projects on at the moment: a 30-lot subdivision, a childcare centre, and another house build with a subdivision there. And I can't throw any more than 10 or 20 hours a week into that, because I'm not physically laying the tiles, I'm not physically digging the trenches. I'm managing it. I'm going out investigating. I've got project managers on them as well. So from a time point of view, I've got a lot of time, and yeah, I love talking about property and helping people. So that just balances out my needs for interaction with people and at the same time doing deals.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, thanks very much for sharing your expertise and giving us a bit of insight into what you offer. I think, I must admit, when you and I first met, I thought we were chalk and cheese, and in terms of programs we are, but sure. I think deep down our values are very aligned, and that's why I think that if any of my students were to say to me, I want to do development, who should I learn from? Then I would feel very comfortable saying, like recommending you as a teacher.
Thank you.
And that's why you're on this, That's why you're on this podcast. I have to remember whose podcast I was on for a minute.
Yeah, that's right.
For listeners, we're doing a little switch, like swapsy. So I'm interviewing Nhan, and then he will interview me. So I just got a bit confused about where I was. Okay, well, thanks so much, and I hope everyone enjoyed that. And yeah, see you next week.
Thanks, guys. Beautiful. Yeah, catch you later. And yeah, if you want to check us out, it's nhanproperty.com. I'm sure Bernadette will chuck that on the.
I will. We'll include that in the show notes. And thanks for that, Nhan. I'm very remiss.
It's all good. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Till next time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cheers.